Hello and welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. My name is Joris and today I'm going to have another Swiss 6 ETF fight, and this time it's between the ETFs that distribute a monthly dividend, and they are of course UCITS ETFs. And how can we find them, those monthly paying dividend ETFs? Well, you can follow my channel of course, but you are already here, so that's great. But another way to find them is on XtraETF. And XtraETF, it's in fact a really great website. The only sad thing is, of course, that you can only use it in Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Austria, and Switzerland. But you can, of course, look it up in. I look for other ETFs as well in the rest of the European continent. The only thing is, of course, now it's here in German. So when you want to do a search, you have to go to Suche and click on ETF Suche. And then when you want distributions, you have to go to Ausschüttung, and there you have to click on Yes, Ja. And then you can choose the interval, and you can here click on monthly distributions. And if you want to have quarterly, you can also choose that, and then you can also choose the months you want to have distributions in. So that's really nice on this side that you have the option to do that. And then of course you have to select the stocks, because yeah, you have more ETFs that invest into bonds and distribute monthly, but we are not interested in that. At least I'm not interested in that. But if you select all those criteria, you are still left with 4 ETFs, and there are 3 from Global X and 1 from JP Morgan. And yeah, you can look them up later on then in the SIX Stock Exchange website, and you use the tickers of course for the Swiss country, and then you get all 4. And when you go to them individually and you go to the fund details, there you can look up the dividends. So for the JP Morgan one, they are all there. So that's really great. But for Global X, when you go to the fund details and you go to the dividends, you see that for the SDIV one, you are already screwed, because on the 6th of January of 2023, it's the last dividend that they mentioned, so that's not correct. For the Global X, the S&P 500 one, when you go to the dividends, there you don't see any of them. And for the Nasdaq 100, it's also the case, you don't see anything there. So you have to go to the Global X website. And when you go to the Global X website, you have to make sure that you are on the EU domain, and then you can go to the SDIV one, and there you have the distribution calendar. So for 2022, 2023 and 2024. And it's the same deal for the S&P 500 one, where you can find the distribution calendar, and also for the Nasdaq 100 one. So with the distribution calendar there as well. But as I said, for XtraETF, the website is really great for searching dividend ETFs, but only for those countries that I mentioned already before. And as I said, other European countries can also use it to search, but you have to watch out for the ticker. As you know, there are a lot of ticker symbols for the same ETF in the European continent. So always look up the ISIN code and use that to do your search later on in your broker, that you don't make a mistake. QYLD, for example, it's the ticker here in Switzerland, but you have QYLD as well in the USA. So when you go to Swissquote, for example, and you type in QYLD, you have two options, and then you have to make sure that you have the one that is noted on the SIX stock exchange and not the one that is noted on the New York Stock Exchange. So we have 4 UCITS ETFs, 2 that invest globally, and that's the JP Morgan one, the Global Equity Premium Income one, and I put all the ticker symbols here, and you will see them in the next slides as well, and the SDIV one from Global X, the SuperDividend one. In the previous videos that I made, you know that I'm not that keen on SDIV, the ETF, because the performance since its inception is actually not great at all. The 2 ETFs that invest in the USA are then XYLF, the Global X S&P 500 covered call ETF, and the QYLD one, that's the Global X Nasdaq 100 covered call ETF. And in the next slides, the performance and the dividend yield are given in Swiss francs, but the dividends are given in US dollar. So the performance and the dividend yield is in Swiss francs, and the dividends themselves are in US dollar. So the first one, you have the JP Morgan Global Equity Premium Income, the JEPG. So it's noted in US dollar on the SIX stock exchange, $25.61 right now on the SIX stock exchange. The dividend is distributed in US dollar. The total expense ratio is 0.35%. You have 252 companies in this ETF. It's a fully replicated one, and there is 103 million invested into this ETF. So it rose a bit since the previous time that I talked about JEPG. And since its inception, so it only started on the 30th of November of 2023, it's up 7.49%. There are 12 dividends per year, so in all months, and the dividend yield for now is 6.41%. And we only have those 6 distributions. And as you will see, January, the X date was in January, but the payout was in February. So we will see that later on in the video. And the one from June still needs to be paid, and I'm also going to talk about that later on. So then we have the SDIV one from Global X, SuperDividend UCITS ETF, a total expense ratio of 0.45. The currency on the SIX stock exchange is Swiss francs, and it's 8.286 Swiss francs right now. The dividend is being paid out in US dollar, and there are 98 companies into this ETF, and 99 million is invested into it. It's also a fully replicated type 1, and in the past year it's up 8.90%. Its performance is 8.90%, and the total since its performance since its inception is minus 24.47%. So still a huge minus, but it used to be bigger. It was even minus 33, 34% at sometimes. So not that great, but yeah, it's a super dividend, so you have to be careful there. 12 dividends per year, so every month, and the dividend yield for now is 12.59%. And this is not an estimation, it's the true dividend yield. So for the past 12 distributions, if you had them and you calculate with this amount that they are worth right now, you have a dividend yield of 12.59%. So if they can keep the distributions up, it's a really nice dividend yield that you get. But if you see here, dividend yield 12.59%, and the past year they are only up 8.90%, that means that in fact they are momentarily still negative in their performance of stock price of the ETF. Then we have the Global X covered call for the S&P 500 XYLF. Total expense ratio also 0.45%, just like the SuperDividend one. You have 13.544 Swiss francs on the SIX stock exchange, and yeah, it contains 500 holdings, not yet, because there is only 21 million invested into this ETF, and it's a swap, so synthetic kind of ETF. You know, I don't think it's completely correct, but for now they are actually a synthetic ETF because they still buy the put option as well to cover the calls. And since its inception, it's up 10.16%. And as you can see here, it's the 11th of July. So now we are the 7th. It's going to be the 7th when I post this. So it's only 4 days to go until we have the year performance of this ETF. But for now, I have to put a hyphen here because I don't know what the actual year performance is, but you get the idea with the 11th here. It's not far away. Also, 12 dividends per year. The dividend yield is 8.57%, but that's still an estimation because we still have one distribution to go. So the one from the beginning of August, we don't know that one for sure yet. So it's based on the first 11 distributions of this ETF, and then calculated it as an average for the 11 months and added the average as the 12 month. And yeah, it's 8.57%, so not bad at all, but yeah, much lower than the SDIV one, of course. And then we have the QYLD, that's the covered call from the Nasdaq 100. Also, total expense ratio of 0.45%. Momentarily, it's almost 15 Swiss francs on the SIX stock exchange. The currency of the dividend, of course, in US dollar. And just the same as for the XYLF one, it's a synthetic swap ETF. They are buying the companies of the Nasdaq 100, but they are far from there. At least here there is 157 million invested into it, so they have a much larger amount of companies that are doing the covering for this ETF, but they are still buying a put option as well to cover the calls on the Nasdaq 100. And in the past year they are up 11.42%, and since their inception they are up almost 24%. So once again, yeah, they are monthly paying ETFs, so here as well 12 distributions in a year, and the dividend yield here is 11.33%. And this one is not an estimation as well because they are around since November of 2022. So we have the 12 distributions of the past 12 months. In fact, the past 11 months, and this month still needs to be paid out. So ex-coupon date was the 5th, so on Friday, and it's going to be paid out on the 15th of July. So now is the question, what if we invested 1000 Swiss francs into them on the 3rd of January of 2024? Where would we be? And I took this date because all ETFs were alive and kicking then, so even the one from JP Morgan, and the SDIV finally started performing since the beginning of December of 2023. Before that, they only went down, so they were around minus 33%, minus 34% around the end of October, but since then they are rising, so that's quite nice to see for investors into SDIV. But it's still not a long period, of course, only a half a year. The same you can say for the JP Morgan ETF, of course, because it was only started at the end of last year. And since its inception, the SDIV one is still down a lot. So I'm still treating SDIV with a lot of caution. So, and if we go and look at Getquin, so you can also look up on just ETF the four ETFs, of course. But now I'm going to talk about the investments on Getquin. So as you know, you can use Getquin as well to test out your investment decisions and your strategy if you like. So in this case, the other ones I used for another video, but I deselected them in the options. So no, thank you. So here you can add them to the aggregation, yes or no. And I did it for all those four. So for JEPG, SDIV, XYLF, and QYLD. Here you can see the other tickers because it's a German app, of course. So XYLP is XYLF, and there was 1,000 francs invested into them. Only for Global X SuperDividend ETF, I could exactly choose 1,000 Swiss francs on the 3rd of January. All the others were just below 1,000 Swiss francs. But as you can see, since the beginning, they are up. All of them are up. And a stupid thing that you need to do every time when you go to one of your portfolios. So here I have them separately. You always have to choose max to see how they evolved. When you select max, you go to another portfolio and you come back. It always switches to 1 day again. I find it quite annoying, but yeah, it's just the way it is. So for JEPG, it is up 66.45 Swiss francs. And if you want to know the total performance, then you have to go to the price gain, so 66.45 Swiss francs. And the dividends that it paid out so far is 25.86. And as you can see, in January, there wasn't a distribution. There was an X date, but it was paid only in February. So here you can see that the X date was on the 11th of January and it was paid out on the 7th of February. So you almost have to wait for a whole month always for this ETF before you get the payout of your dividend. That's quite annoying. You know that I don't actually like that a lot. But the thing is, I like the JEPG ETF because it's a fully replicated one. So far it's performing quite nice, but yeah, just the same for the SDIV one, of course. Now the last months it performed quite nice, and if you look at this, yeah, it's another graph, of course, compared to the JEPG one, but here it's up 42.50 Swiss francs, and here you can see all the other distributions, so the ones that are being paid out, and the dividends, the total is 56.89 Swiss francs. So in total return you have 99.39. And for XYLF you have the same. So it is up 101.94 Swiss francs in price. It's up 44.61 in dividends, and the total return is 146.55. But once again here, you have to pay attention to the X date here, the 5th of July, it was going ex-dividend. So in fact, there we already lost the price of the dividend, and it's only going to be paid out the 15th of July. And for QYLD, it's just the same. So here you also have the X date on the 5th, so on Friday, and it's only going to be paid out on the 15th of July. And there we have a price gain of 98.95 Swiss francs, a dividend gain of 61.77, and in total it's up 160.73. So I quite like Getquin for comparing the different ETFs like that, and here you get a quite nice view with your monthly distributions. And if you invested 4,000 Swiss francs in the beginning of the year, you would receive every month more or less 32 Swiss francs, 33, 32 Swiss francs. Only in January, of course, there, because the JP Morgan one had an X date, but not an actual payment yet, because it wasn't around long enough. But you will see, you see that on average you will receive 32 for the QYLD and the XYLF one. Getquin doesn't take into account that they are monthly paying ETFs, but they will come to that as well, so it's not a problem. I know I have to say it's the JP Morgan one and the XYLF one, because they aren't around for a year, so they are still waiting until the year is passed. So I think the XYLF one, it will be another week or 2 weeks, and then the forecasts will be added here. And when you are premium, you can already see the estimates with the total numbers already. And for the JP Morgan one, we have to wait until the end of November, probably beginning of December of this year, that it adds here the prediction as well. But yeah, you get the picture from Getquin. So when we go back to the presentation, here you see the price loss of the QYLD. It's 98.95. XYLF, it was the highest price gain with 101.94. The JP Morgan one went up 66.45 in price, and the SDIV one 42.50. Also in the beginning of the year a bit negative, but that's because of the dividend, of course. So they are paying out quite nice dividends, just like QYLD, around 12%. So 61.77 was distributed by QYLD, XYLF 44.61, JEPG 25.86, and SDIV 56.89. Then the ex-dividend, that still needs to be paid. So for QYLD and XYLF, it's 9.87 and 6.72 Swiss francs. And for JP Morgan one, it's 7.85. The SDIV one, it's still coming. It's around the 20th of July, the 18th of July or something, that the ex-coupon date is going to happen. And if you add all that up, then you have a total value for QYLD of 170.59. For XYLF, it's 153.27. For JEPG, it's just over 100, and for SDIV, it's just below 100. So, as expected, the ETFs that invest into the USA are outperforming the global ETFs, but they are all quite positive. So it's up 17%, 15%, 10%, and 9.9%. So for now, half yearly results for all those monthly paying ETFs are quite nice. And if you look then at the other overview that I made, so 1 year performance here for QYLD, it's 11.42%. XYLF, I put 10.16%, but you know, there are 4 days to go for XYLF to know the true 1 year performance. The dividend yield, yeah, QYLD above 11%, SDIV above 12%, and the total expense ratios for the Global X funds, it's always 0.45%, and for the JP Morgan one, it's 0.35%. So that's also something that I like. But as I said, SDIV still minus 24% since its inception. So still a bit in doubt about the SDIV, but at least since the beginning of December of 2023, the performance is changing in the right direction, and hopefully for the investors that put their money into SDIV, it stays like that and they start really making money for them. But with that being said, I thank you for watching this one. I hope you consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, also hitting that like button. It helps out the channel enormously by increasing the amount of videos that are distributed to other people that are interested in this kind of content. So with that being said, thank you for watching and see you on the next one on my YouTube channel. Bye.